Xavier Owens yanked his coat tighter around his little girl's shoulders and pulled her closer as the freezing wind swept through the city bus stop. "You cold, kiddo?" he asked, crouching in front of her. Kira nodded, eyes wide, teeth chattering. "A little." He smiled softly and brushed her curls back beneath her knit hat. "We'll be home soon. Just a few more minutes, all right." It was past 10 at night. The last bus was delayed again. He should have sprung for a cab, but that $10 meant breakfast tomorrow. Ever since Kira's mom walked out 2 years ago, it had been just the two of them. Every dime counted. That's when he saw her. A woman alone sitting on the bench across from them, arms wrapped tightly around herself, visibly shivering in a sleek black coat that looked more stylish than warm. Her high heels were muddy, her hair wind-whipped, and her lips slightly blue. She looked completely out of place in this freezing corner of East Rutherford, New Jersey. Xavier glanced down at Kira, then back at the woman. "Stay here a sec," he said, slipping off his only decent hoodie. "Dad, you'll be cold. I'll survive." He gave her a wink and walked over to the woman. "Hey," he said gently, not wanting to scare her. "You okay?" She looked up, startled. Her eyes were sharp but tired. "I'm fine." "You're freezing," he said, ignoring her tone. "Here," he held out the hoodie. She blinked. "You're giving me your sweater." "Yeah, you look like you need it more than I do." She hesitated, then reached out slowly. Their hands touched for a second too long. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer now. "That's kind, no worries." He nodded and turned to head back to Kira. "What's your name?" she called after him. He paused. "Xavier, that's my daughter, Kira." The woman looked at the little girl wrapped in Xavier's oversized coat. "I'm Kensington," she said, standing up slowly. "Kensington Clark." Xavier blinked. "That's a name." She let out a breathy laugh, still holding his hoodie against her chest. "That's what my parents were going for, I think." Just then, a sleek black car sped around the corner and screeched to a halt beside them. A man in a suit jumped out. "Miss Clark, oh my God, we've been looking everywhere." "I told you I wanted to walk," she muttered. "In this part of town. Please, come on, your meeting with the board is in 30 minutes. Xavier's brows furrowed. "You're important." Kensington turned to him, her expression suddenly unreadable. "I'm in charge of a few things. I'm the CEO of Clark & Rowe." Xavier blinked. "The tech company, with the commercials." "Yeah," he laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "Guess I just gave a billionaire my hoodie." She smiled, a real one this time. "Guess so." The driver opened the door for her. She hesitated, then walked over to Xavier and carefully folded the hoodie, placing it back in his hands. "Keep it," he said. "I'll have it dry cleaned and returned. Seriously, it's just a hoodie." "I don't forget kindness," she said. "Ever?" She turned to Kira. "You've got a good dad." Kira smiled shyly. "Thanks, I know." And then Kensington was gone, swept into the car and swallowed by the city. Xavier stood there, stunned. "Dad," Kira whispered. She looked like a movie star. "Yeah," he said, slowly putting his hoodie back on, "or a storm in heels." He thought that was the end of it. But 3 days later, he walked into the bakery where he worked part-time, and there she was, Kensington Clark in a tailored cream coat, standing at the counter, ordering 2 hot chocolates. She turned, spotted him, and smiled. "Thought I'd return the hoodie in person," she said, holding out a neatly folded sweatshirt in a dry cleaning bag. Xavier stared at her. "You tracked me down. You gave me your coat, Xavier. I'm not the kind of woman who lets that go." He blinked. "You really didn't have to, I wanted to." She handed him one of the hot chocolates. "This one's for Kira." He hesitated, then took it. "Thanks. I also wanted to ask." She glanced around the modest bakery. "Would you have dinner with me?" Xavier nearly dropped the cup. "What, dinner?" she said, like it was nothing. "Tonight. You're a CEO, and you're a good man. You didn't know who I was when you helped me, that matters." He shook his head, flustered. "I don't belong in your world." "Maybe," she said, stepping closer, "but I'd like to see what happens if you try." Xavier stared at her, heart beating faster than it had in years. "All right," he said finally, "but only if I can pay next time," she grinned. "Deal." That night, she sent a car. Kira stayed with his downstairs neighbor, a sweet old lady who adored her, and Xavier, after showering and changing into his best thrift store, buttoned down, sat across from Kensington in one of Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurants. The city lights sparkled behind them. A waiter brought out lobster risotto like it was no big deal. I've never had food this fancy, Xavier said. Eyes wide, she laughed. It's just rice and shellfish. Don't let the gold flakes fool you. He watched her for a moment. Why me? Her smile faded into something more serious. Because you didn't want anything from me. Because you looked at me like I was human. And because I haven't felt this safe with anyone in a long time. He looked down at his plate, then back up at her. You're something else, Kensington. So are you, Xavier. And for the first time in years, he let himself hope. The following week moved like a current Xavier wasn't sure he was meant to be caught in. Kensington didn't vanish like some impossible dream. She called never at night, always after school hours, and each time her voice wrapped around him like something both unfamiliar and deeply welcome. She asked questions no one else did. Not about his past or what he wanted out of life, but about what made him laugh, what music he played on Sundays when he cooked, what Kira liked to draw. He answered cautiously, like touching glass that might shatter. But she never pulled away. On Thursday evening, she showed up again. This time she waited outside the bakery in a tailored navy coat and soft leather gloves, holding a paper bag. I brought pastries, she said when he opened the door. I figured it was only fair to bring you something sweet in return. He glanced at the logo on the bag, some French place uptown he couldn't pronounce, and stepped aside. You came all the way down here to bring me breakfast I can't afford. You're worth the trip, she said, and walked past him into the kitchen. Xavier looked around at the flour-dusted counters and the flickering overhead light and wondered what she saw when she looked at this place. At him. She set the bag down and pulled out a small box. There's a Kuine Ammon in here that might change how you feel about mornings forever. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You always show up like this. Fancy coat, surprise pastries, casually charming. Only for men who once gave me their only hoodie in 30-degree weather. He laughed under his breath. You keep saying that like it's extraordinary, it's just basic decency. No, Xavier, it's rare. She didn't stay long. Kensington never lingered. She'd walk in like lightning and leave before the air could settle. But each visit left something behind, an aftertaste, a question, a want that curled under his ribs. On Saturday, Kira's school hosted a small father-daughter event. Nothing fancy, just paper lanterns and folding chairs in the gymnasium. She wore her favorite pink dress and twirled until she got dizzy. Xavier was helping her pick glitter from her curls when a voice behind him said, "She's beautiful." He turned. Kensington stood near the doors, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, hair tied up in a loose knot. It was the most casual he'd ever seen her, and somehow it made her even more striking. "What are you doing here?" he asked, startled. "Kira invited me," he frowned. "When?" "Wednesday." She said, and I quote, "You make Daddy nervous in a good way. That must mean you're important." Xavier groaned. "She didn't." "She did," Kensington said with a smile. "So I figured I'd come see what a nervous Xavier looks like." Kira ran up, grabbing her hand. "Come dance with us." "I don't know if I'm allowed," Kensington started. "You are now," Kira declared, dragging her toward the makeshift dance floor. Xavier followed, helpless to stop the warmth spreading through his chest. They danced. Clumsily, awkwardly, joyfully. Kira laughed so hard she hiccuped. Kensington moved with surprising ease, like she was used to finding rhythm in chaos. And Xavier, for the first time in years, let himself feel like he was part of something more than survival. After the music ended and the kids ran off to devour cupcakes, Xavier and Kensington sat on the bleachers, catching their breath. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For showing up." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, her gaze drifted to where Kira was holding court among a group of glitter-covered classmates. "She's got your eyes," Kensington said eventually, "but her confidence, that's all her. She's stronger than I've ever been." Kensington looked at him then, really looked. "You think being strong means never breaking." He didn't answer. "You hold everything up by yourself, Xavier, that's strength. But sometimes strength means letting someone else hold part of it too." He swallowed hard and looked away. "Why me?" he asked finally. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I'd like the chance to find out." They didn't kiss. Not yet, but when her hand brushed lightly against his on the bench, he didn't pull away. Later that night, after tucking Kira into bed, Xavier stood on the fire escape of their apartment, looking out over the city. The lights blinked like distant promises. He thought about Kensington's laughter echoing through the gym, about how she danced like no one was watching, even though everyone was, about how, for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel small in the shadow of someone's world. He didn't know exactly what this was, but he knew one thing: he wanted more. The first time Xavier stepped into Kensington's world, it didn't feel like crossing a line, it felt like stepping into another life entirely. The invitation came without fanfare. A phone call, her voice low and measured. "There's a gala for the New York STEM Foundation tomorrow. I'm one of the sponsors. I'd like you to come with me." He stood in the bakery's walk-in freezer, phone pressed to his ear, shivering but unable to say no. "I don't own anything close to black tie." "I've taken care of that," she replied. "A stylist will drop off a tux at your place tonight, altered to your measurements." Xavier stared at the wall of frozen danishes. "You got my measurements. You're not the only one who notices things." The tuxedo arrived in a garment bag with a discreet note and a pair of shoes that looked like they cost more than his rent. Kira watched him try it on with the wide-eyed awe usually reserved for superheroes. "You look like someone in a movie," she said, clutching the sleeve. "Like one of those guys who saves someone." Xavier didn't feel like he saved anything, but he buttoned the jacket anyway and tried to believe he belonged. The next evening, they arrived at the Pierre Hotel in a black Bentley with a driver who greeted him by name. Kensington stepped out first, her gown a sweeping cascade of silver that caught the light like water. When he joined her, she didn't hesitate, her fingers wove through his like they'd always belonged there. Inside, chandeliers glittered, and the air buzzed with the kind of money that never had to explain itself. Xavier kept his shoulders back, his chin up, even as waiters offered hors d'oeuvres he couldn't pronounce and guests glanced at him with polite confusion. "You're doing fine," Kensington murmured as she guided him through the crowd. "Better than most of the men here." He leaned close. "They all look like they were born in tuxedos. They were born in hospitals, same as you." She introduced him to board members, partners, investors. No one dared question his presence with her hand resting on his arm. But when they reached a tall man with a drink in each hand and a voice that carried across the room, the air shifted. "Ken," the man said, planting a cheek kiss too close to her mouth. "Didn't expect to see you out of the office. And who's this?" Xavier extended a hand. "Xavier Owens." The man didn't take it. "Of course, the hoodie guy." Kensington's smile vanished. "Ethan." "I'm just saying," Ethan continued, sipping his drink. "You've always been full of surprises, Ken, but this one, impressive, very off-brand." Xavier didn't flinch. "Funny." "I was just thinking the same about you." Ethan chuckled, unbothered. "Touché." Kensington stepped between them. "Ethan, I'd rather not make a scene tonight. Go find someone who still finds you clever." Ethan raised his glass in mock salute and sauntered off. Xavier exhaled slowly. "He always like that. He's my ex-fiancé," she said without looking at him. "And yes," he blinked. "Fiancé, years ago." She turned to face him fully now. "It didn't end poorly. It just ended when I realized I wanted something real. Something that didn't come with negotiations and press releases." Xavier studied her face. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I know. But I want you to have it." Later in the evening, after a brief speech and an auction that raised more than Xavier could earn in 5 years, they slipped away to the terrace. The city stretched out around them, glittering and endless. Kensington leaned against the railing, her voice quieter than usual. "I used to think love was about compatibility, matching resumes, aligned goals. And now I think it's about who you want next to you when the world doesn't make sense." Xavier stepped beside her. "The world rarely makes sense to me." She turned, her gaze searching his. "Then maybe we figure it out together." He didn't kiss her. Not yet. But something shifted between them, something irreversible. The next morning, he woke to the scent of pancakes and the sound of Kira humming in the kitchen. She was drawing a picture of a woman in a silver dress holding hands with a man in a tuxedo. "Did you have fun last night?" she asked without looking up. He poured coffee. "I think it was the first time I ever felt like I could breathe in someone else's world." Kira frowned at her drawing. "You don't need to be in her world, Dad. Maybe you can make a new one together." He blinked. "Where'd you hear that?" "I made it up," she said proudly. That afternoon, he received an envelope at the bakery. No note, Just 2 plain tickets inside, 1 adult, 1 child. Departure next Friday. Destination, Florence, he called her, unsure. This is too much, he said the moment she answered. You can't just fly me across the world. I'm not flying you anywhere, she replied. I'm inviting you to see something beautiful, to let Kira taste gelato on cobblestone streets. To give you space to breathe, you can say no. He looked down at the tickets, heart pounding. I want to say yes, he said, but I need to know something. Ask me. Why me? Still, after all this, there was a pause. Because every time you look at me, she said softly, I remember who I am, not what I'm supposed to be. He didn't answer right away, but when he finally did, his voice was steady. Then we'll see you Friday. And for the first time in his life, Xavier Owens booked time off work with nothing but hope in his pocket. The sun dipped low behind the terracotta rooftops of Florence, casting long golden shadows across the stone terrace where Xavier stood. Kira's laughter drifted up from the courtyard below, where she chased pigeons with 2 other children from the villa's guest house. Her joy moved through the air like music. Behind him, Kensington emerged from the villa's arched doorway, barefoot, a thin cardigan draped over her shoulders. She held 2 wine glasses in one hand, a small plate of olives in the other. The way she's taken to Italian gelato, she said, setting everything on the table beside him. She may never forgive us for taking her back to New Jersey. She told me this morning she wants to live in a pink house here and sell paintings to tourists, Xavier said, sitting down with a quiet sigh. Honestly, doesn't sound like the worst plan. Kensington smiled as she poured the wine. She's got vision, I like that about her. He studied her face in the fading light. You really brought us here just to see something beautiful. I brought you here, she said, because I wanted you to know what it feels like to exist without scarcity. To wake up and not have to count every worry before your feet hit the ground. I'm not used to needing anyone, he said. I've lived so long being the one who carries everything, I forgot what it's like to be held. She leaned back in her chair, wine in hand, her gaze never leaving his. I don't want to take anything from you, Xavier. I just want to walk beside you. And maybe if you'll let me carry a little too. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out over the Florentine skyline, the cathedral dome glowing orange in the dusk. For a long time, silence wrapped around them like a second skin. Then he turned back to her. I've always thought love was a luxury for people who didn't have to choose between paying rent or heating the apartment. Kensington tilted her head. And now I think maybe love is the thing that makes the rest of it bearable. Maybe it's the only thing that ever made sense at all. A breeze picked up, soft and cool. She reached across the table and took his hand. Come with me, she said. He followed her down the stone steps and through a narrow hallway that opened into an old library filled with the scent of leather and aged paper. At the center, a table had been set with a scattering of candles and a single envelope. She picked it up and handed it to him. What's this? He asked, brows drawn. Just open it. Inside was a letter, handwritten in her unmistakable script, and beneath it a contract. He looked up, confused. You got me a job. I didn't get you anything, she said. I asked the head of my foundation's culinary initiative if they had a place for someone with your skill and perspective. They've been looking for someone to run a new community kitchen in the Lower East Side, someone who understands what it means to feed people when it matters most. He stared at the letter, then back at her. I don't want your charity. This isn't charity, Xavier. This is an opportunity. And it's yours because you've earned it with every single thing you've survived and every single thing you've given. He folded the letter slowly, pressing it to the table. I don't know how to live in a world where people just give without taking. Then let me be the first. Her voice didn't waver. She stood straighter, braver than he'd ever seen her. I love you, she said. I love the way you make space for everyone but yourself. I love the way you look at your daughter like she's the whole sky. I love that you gave me your only hoodie in the cold without knowing who I was, that you didn't care. His breath caught. I didn't expect this, he said. Neither did I, she replied. But I'm not walking away from something that feels like home. He stepped closer, voice low. You're not afraid of all the things I'm not, her expression softened. I'm only afraid of losing the chance to build something real with you. For the first time in years, he didn't hesitate. He kissed her. It wasn't polished or practiced. It was full of truth, of hunger and hope, and everything neither of them had dared to say until now. When they finally pulled apart, she pressed her forehead to his. "What now?" she whispered. "We go home," he said. "We build something." Together. 3 weeks later, they stood outside a small brick building on Delancey Street. Inside, volunteers buzzed in the kitchen, prepping for the first community dinner. Kira handed out flyers at the door, her face lit with pride. Xavier adjusted his apron, brushed flour from his hands, and looked at Kensington beside him in jeans and a t-shirt, her hair pulled back, holding a tray of fresh bread she'd helped knead. "You sure you want to be part of this life?" he asked. She bumped her shoulder against his. "I don't want to be anywhere else." They kissed again, not out of passion, but out of certainty. By the time the first guests arrived, the kitchen smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic, and laughter spilled down the sidewalk. He had given her a blanket when she was cold. She had given him a life he never thought was possible. And in the warmth of that small kitchen, surrounded by people who mattered, Xavier Owens finally understood what it meant to be home. The grand opening of the community kitchen had been 3 months ago, and the once empty brick space now buzzed with life every day. Long tables stretched across the floor, covered in mismatched tablecloths, and surrounded by neighbors who'd once passed each other on the street without a word. Now they shared stories and meals, and Xavier had learned more names in 3 months than he had in the last 3 years combined. Each evening, Kensington arrived after her last meeting, sleeves rolled up, ready to slice vegetables or scrub pots. She never made a show of it. She simply found her place, whether that was holding a crying toddler while a single mother ate in peace, or helping Kira with homework in the corner office. They turned into a quiet study nook. Xavier had never seen her in a boardroom, but he didn't need to. Watching her bring order to chaos over a pot of stew was better than any corporate highlight reel. One Wednesday afternoon, he stood in the walk-in pantry restocking shelves when she appeared in the doorway holding a stack of mail. "Something came for you," she said, handing him a thick envelope. He opened it slowly, eyes scanning the crisp paper. Then he looked up, stunned. "I applied on a whim," he said. "Didn't think I'd even hear back." She stepped closer. "What is it?" "They want me to speak at the Culinary Equity Conference in DC next month. About food access, community programming," and he paused, shaking his head in disbelief. "About how we're doing things here. You deserve that stage." Her voice was steady, but something flickered in her eyes, something that looked like pride and a touch of something deeper. "They'll cover travel and hotel," he said, "but I'd rather not go if it means being away from you and Kira for 3 days. She tilted her head. "What if we all went? You'd clear your schedule. For you. Every time." That night, as Kira fell asleep in her room upstairs, Xavier and Kensington sat on the couch beneath a threadbare quilt she'd insisted wasn't as ugly as he claimed. "You know," he said, tracing patterns along the back of her hand, "I used to think love was supposed to make you feel like you were flying." "It doesn't." "No," he said. "It makes me feel grounded. Like I'm finally standing on something solid." She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "That's what I wanted, not fireworks. Just someone who stays. You're not going anywhere, only where you are." The next morning, he stood in front of the class of 4th graders Kira's teacher had invited him to visit for Career Week. He wore his apron, held up a bag of fresh herbs, and talked about how food could bring people together. Kira sat in the front row, arms crossed, grinning like she knew a secret no one else did. Afterward, as they walked back to the kitchen, she slipped her hand into his. "You were the coolest one there," she said. "Way better than the dentist." High praise. "I told my teacher you were a chef who helps people, and my almost stepmom is a superhero." He paused. "Almost stepmom. She doesn't know it yet. But she will." That night, he stood in the apartment kitchen, watching Kensington press cookie dough into neat rows. The kitchen wasn't fancy, still the same scratched counters and wobbly drawers, but it felt different now. Full. He turned off the faucet and dried his hands. "I need to ask you something." She looked up, brow lifted. He reached into the drawer and pulled out a small velvet box he'd hidden beneath the dish towels 2 weeks earlier. Her breath caught as he opened it. I don't have a rooftop or a string quartet, he said. Just a ring and a heart that's not going to make sense without you in it. She stared at him, eyes wide, then slowly set down the cookie sheet. You're asking me to marry you in a kitchen, she asked, voice trembling. Where else would I do it, she laughed, then knelt with him on the linoleum floor, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, yes, Xavier, 1,000 times yes. The wedding wasn't in a cathedral or a mansion. It was in the community kitchen, with string lights overhead and paper flowers made by Kira and her classmates. Neighbors brought dishes from every culture and corner of the city. Someone played an off-key violin. And when Xavier saw Kensington walk down that aisle in a simple white dress with Kira holding her hand, he knew he'd never want another moment more than this one. After the vows, they danced in the middle of the room, surrounded by the people they'd built something with. No one cared that the music skipped or that the cake was slightly lopsided. All that mattered was how tightly Kensington held him, how Kira clung to his waist between songs, and how the world, for once, felt exactly as it should. Years later, they still ran the kitchen together. The building expanded to include a rooftop garden, a second floor for classes, and a childcare corner that grew out of one of Kira's suggestions. She painted murals across the back wall in bold colors, her signature scrawled in the bottom corner. Xavier spoke at more conferences. Kensington took on fewer corporate roles, directing her time into the foundation's local branches. They traveled sometimes, but they always came home to their corner of the city. One evening, as they sat on the roof with plates of pasta and a bottle of cheap wine, watching the skyline flicker, Kensington leaned into his side. Still think you don't belong in my world? No, he said, wrapping his arm around her. I think we built our own. She raised her glass. To home, he echoed. And beneath the stars, surrounded by the scent of basil and city air, they kissed, full of everything they'd fought for, chosen, and finally, fully become. Together.